Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnackit.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnackit.sbnation.com.
This is the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez here with you, along with a cast of many. Andrew Glukov, the Leroy Jenkins of UCF Twitter Mafia, has decided to run screaming through the doors into this podcast here, along with the student of the game himself, Kyle Nash. Boys, how are you? How's the week been?
Fantastic.
Yeah, I bet.
You're not going to say the line yet, Drew?
Gotta wait for it. You can't jump the gun.
No. We got to wait for the appropriate tweet that we wanted to make fun of here.
Let's do this.
Remember, half of the point is you're in mid prep. You can't just go off immediately. You got to savor the moment.
Listen, the chances of me believing that are 33.3.
Stop right now. We're not. No,
I like those odds.
We're not. It's never tell me the odds. We got a lot to talk about, but really it's just one big thing. We're just going to talk about alignment here in this show. There are a few news stories that we're going to get to in a little bit, but realignment is the topic of the day. And we are here for you to try and give, well, at least sort of set things up for what we know and what we think and what other people are thinking, and kind of try and make sense of where we are right now in this whole thing. So, so let's get, and most importantly, we're here to talk about what this all means or may not mean for UCF going forward. So, as usual, you can follow us at blackandgoldbanneret.com. You can follow us on Twitter at UCF_Banneret_SBN. If you thought you followed us from before, make sure that you follow us. See if you follow us on our new handle, UCF_Banneret_SBN. Once again, is the handle. Also, Facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret. All right, let's dive in. So, what's the latest here? And Lopez, I want you to come in on this. What's the latest here on on realignment news? So, the Big 12. There are reports, multiple reports, that the Big 12 is in serious discussion with at least 4, maybe as many as 6 members of the Pac-12. The main 4 are Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado. Quite possibly the other 2 could be Oregon and Washington. Now, Oregon and Washington have been rumored to be in discussions with the Big Ten as 2 more Western schools to help out the LA schools, who obviously have just announced, USC and UCLA have announced that they will join the Big Ten. Lopez, what's the latest on the actual news regarding the Big 12?
As of 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern, Thursday night. We have to highlight this during this show because
as of
things can
10
change
PM
real quick.
Eastern time on Thursday, July the 7th. Where are we?
Well, no news on that. We have no news. We are pretty much still in the same conference.
The news is that there is no news.
Correct, because even though last week nobody saw USC and UCLA leaving the Big Ten, nobody saw it coming until John Wilmer broke it on Thursday morning. All of a sudden, everybody's sources are talking. All of a sudden, we're supposed to believe that everybody's talking. So I think, Drew, I want you to chime into this. There's a lot of media use right now, or there's some fake stuff going out there where people all of a sudden are acting like they're, have, people that they're important or something.
There's lots of fake stuff.
Yeah, a lot of fake stuff. Fake news, as they would say. But I do think the conferences right now are kind of using the media here to gather, leverage, or trying to give on all fronts. I think the ACC is using some of their media. The Pac-12 is definitely using some of the media. There's been stuff thrown out about TV deals, loose relationships, etc. Drew, this is the silly stuff, right? This is what we're just going to see a lot of stuff thrown, but really we don't know if anything is going to happen this week or next month or next year or 2 years from now. Really.
Well, remember, conferences and schools are constantly talking to each other, constantly. USC has been talking to the Big Ten for months. Now, it wasn't anything serious until the last few weeks. It was just kind of casual stuff. Even UCF talks to other conferences, the ACC, the SEC. You always want to be on the mind of those conferences. Even if you don't really have a shot, you just keep talking to them. Just keep talking. Because not only that, you're also talking about other things, not just membership, but possible, playing against teams and whatnot. So you're always talking. And the thing is, with those backdoor channels, you're allowed to start gauging interest. Remember, it took a couple weeks from the moment the Big Ten decided to start with feasibility studies. This is all documented. There's a great article in The Athletic about it. This isn't new stuff. Once they started sending out feasibility studies, that's when things cranked up. So the truth is, you're not going to have, and I remember we talked about this within our message group, and unfortunately I couldn't make the show last week, but I would have said it then. Nothing was going to happen this week. It's too fast.
Right.
It takes time. I remember saying it would take at least 2 weeks from the start of when things start heating up, because I guarantee you that membership was never really a conversation piece as far as the Pac-12 schools with the Big 12. It was never real, because both at that time were actually stable until they got the curveball with USC and UCLA, and then all hell has broken loose. And with the struggles that Pac-12 already had on their current media deal and what was looking forward towards their next media deal, this sent up red flags like crazy of get out, it's a sinking ship. And that's when the conversation started. But it's more than just, let's talk, I'm going to give you an invitation, you're going to apply, and it's done. As you know, there's a lot of moving parts in moving conference affiliation. It's not an easy process. Even not including the buyouts and all that stuff, it takes a lot. You got to go through. There's a whole process, buy-ins and agreeing to certain rights that you're going to give up and other things. It's not cut and dry, and that's why it takes a while. And obviously now we're in the silly part because it's too fast for anything real to happen. So a lot of this fake stuff that no one would know isn't real is going on right now. Here's the truth. They have talked to these schools. Here's the not truth. No one's accepted anything.
Right.
So, you're in that in between. They've had conference calls. But remember, UCF had visits, had in-person visits before an invitation was ever extended. It's not like magical doom done. So I think right now we're in the
it's not like shopping at Sam's or in one of those places.
Yeah. I see that on the shelf. I'm just going to pull it down and buy.
Let's say UCF is over there.
I can get a 6-pack of old Pac-12 teams. Okay.
All right. Yeah,
exactly.
sure.
It's a process. It takes time, and the schools are going to do their due diligence. They also want to talk to the media partners. Is this a smart move? And there's a lot of silly news out there. I guarantee you that people don't have the full picture of what these media partners are. Remember, Big 12 is split between Fox and ESPN. ESPN has a very specific agenda going on right now, because losing the Pac-12 loses inventory. Losing the Big 12 loses inventory, because now you got CBS and NBC potentially clawing in. So they have a specific interest. Fox is probably going to be pretty safe with the Big 12. I think Fox is going to stay as a partner with them. I don't think they're at risk of moving. So you have agendas, and that's when you start talking about the whole things getting out in the public, leaking certain details about creating a public narrative, such as the loose partnership between the ACC
boy.
and the Pac-12.
Yeah, we're going to roast that in a second.
Oh, God. Anyone in the ACC is going to say, this is the dumbest idea. I'm not doing it. But we'll roast that in a second. But it all comes back down to the fact that we have to be patient. We have time. Remember, the day that USC and UCLA put their notice in was the last day to be able to get into 2024 without severe financial, implications. So you go with that. There's plenty of time to hammer this stuff out. The Pac-12 is trying to accelerate, to get a new TV deal put together as a way of holding everyone together. Guarantee you, the Pac-12, if they get a new deal put together, the Big 12, when they get the new deal put together, they're going to have grantor rights involved. They're going to have some sort of security in that. We've seen how effective it is with Oklahoma and Texas. They're still going to cough up 80 mil just to get out of the conference, but you're looking at 3 digits worth of money that Oklahoma couldn't afford, and that's keeping them into 2025. It's holding the ACC together because the SEC and the Big Ten are waiting to snap up some teams there. So the grant of rights is really effective. So, don't be surprised to see that in the next round of contracts between those two conferences if the Pac-12 survives.
Okay. So here's what I wanted to do. We picked out a few tweets out here and a few stories, and I want to get a reaction from the three of you on each of them, and relatively rapid fire here. All right. So Drew, Kyle, and Eric, here we go. So the first thing I want to talk about is what they call the four corners: Utah, Colorado, Arizona, Arizona State. In your opinion, are they going when the dust settles? Do you guys think they will be in the Big 12? Drew, I'll start with you.
I'm going to say yes. They, while they don't move the needle heavily as far as value, they offer security. You now have 18 or 16 teams as opposed to 12. So if another poaching happens, you have backup.
Okay. Kyle?
Stick you with your word inventory here, Drew. I too think it happens, though granted, I couldn't tell you how quickly or how long it'll take for that dust to settle. Maybe they're relatively stable for Fox. You make that point, but I think Fox is also going to get aggressive to gain ground on ESPN. This is a chance to make the worldwide leader, aka the mothership, aka ESPN, maybe lose some market share, because when you got an oligopoly like this, the only way you get power is to take it. I think Fox is very interested in that. And oh, by the way, side note, yes, get that money signal out. I'm not going to claim you're Johnny Manziel as a Browns fan, but that's a whole other thing. The whole concept is, for me, is that inventory piece, like you mentioned. And I feel like, that's the only way you're going to gain market share and also repel Apple and Amazon and those takers. We haven't talked about the alternative mediums yet. So,
Eric?
If they want to stick with Oregon and Washington, who I think is stuck, and try to make the Pac-12 work, then I think they will be in the Big 12, but not as quickly as people would like it to be.
Okay, when?
I might be a few years, because there's a part of me that wonders if the Pac-12 is going to try to make this work for at least a year, try to make this work a little longer, give it a year or 2 years. And Drew, you make a great point. None of these schools have to make a decision today or tomorrow, next week at all. You could wait till June 30th next year to make a decision before it affects an extra year. So to me, there's not a rush, because I think everybody's going to wait till what the Big Ten does, in particular with South Bend. So I think they hold, but I do think those four will eventually be in the Big 12. I just don't know when.
Let me caveat that.
I already knew was going to come in on that one. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Well, and this is why they're doing it. They've accelerated the new media deal. They're going to have a grant of rights built into that. So no
one in their right mind would sign it.
Well, either it's you sign it or you have no media deal. That's what's going to end up being.
They're
going to be strong armed either to, basically.
Oh, I agree. What I mean, it could drag out. It could drag out to next June. I don't think it could, but somebody decides next week or two, but they may not, Drew. They don't have to.
No, they're going to wait it out. I think it's going to probably be a little bit before.
Yeah, I think there's some stalling. I mean, remember, UCF.
Oregon is stalling.
Yeah, because they're in denial. But Phil Knight's been in denial since Michael Jordan retired. So what else is new?
Ooh.
Ouch.
And well, speaking of that, I guess we can kiss that sponsorship goodbye for the program. Oregon and Washington. Likelihood that they will tell the Big Ten, who reportedly they are flirting with at the moment. Likelihood that they say, "Hey, you know what, guys? We've waited long enough for you. We're gonna jump ship now to the Big 12 because we just don't want to wait for you and or Notre Dame." Kyle, I'm going to start with you. Oregon and Washington to the Big 12. Buy it, sell it, hold it.
You know, the problem with giving a definite answer on this is the Notre Dame card. And this is all on how much Notre Dame stalls the negotiation or if they outright say no. To you guys' point, they may try to push things off a couple years. If that happens, if they reach that 2-year fail-safe and they still don't have an offer from the Big Ten, they're going to take their leverage that they have left with the Pac-12 the remaining Pac-12 and become part of the Big 12 or whatever the entity will be at that time to be like, hey, we're still young and hip. Look at us. You know, now granted, it'll be Oregon saying that mostly because Washington isn't that relevant. I'm sorry. Woof. But yeah, at the end of the day there, I think if I'm going to say 2 years, if the Big Ten does not pull them in, they'll move.
Eric?
I agree with Kyle. I think Oregon and Washington's going to try to survive to save the Pac-12 because they could be the big dog in that conference as it's currently set up. Whereas if they go to the Big 12 or the Big 10, they're just going to be, second fiddle. So they're going to wait it out.
Drew?
The issue at hand is not Notre Dame saying yes anytime soon. It's the fact that Notre Dame can't get out of the grant of rights. Right. They're not going to pay the ridiculous money. So Notre Dame, for all intents and purposes, is off the table. They're not going, because of the way the contracts are set up. The way the contracts are set up with the ACC, if they join a football conference, it has to be the ACC. So the only way they can go to the Big Ten is if they leave completely, which means all your non-football sports are now under the grant of rights. So until someone finds a hole in the grant of rights, they're stuck.
Unless they buy out of it.
I don't see them buying out of it. I don't see any of them doing it. You're looking at,
it's a lot cheaper for Notre Dame to buy out of a grant of rights of the ACC
than any other school.
Because football's not in it.
Right.
And they may wait a little bit, but I don't see them doing it at least in the near term.
That's a good point too, Drew. Like with each passing year, that buyout is cheaper, so that does increase the chances. And they're setting the market. And they also have to dodge an expense. I'm with you that Notre Dame probably won't jump in 22, but with each passing year, right? I'll put it this way. There's enough, money flowing to where I don't think they're intimidated too much by that buyout, but it's still a good point. I'm not cheapening it.
But keep in mind, the Big Ten TV deal hasn't been agreed to. In fact, John Oran, who's of the Sports Business Journal, says that, no, this was supposed to be done by May. Now you add USC, UCLA. He thinks this might not get done till July and August. And the question is the Big Ten waiting for Notre Dame? If you're Notre Dame, do you want to get into the Big Ten before this TV deal is struck? Because once the TV deal is done and the terms have been set, doesn't mean that they are in trouble down the road or anything. But I think that might be the only scenario where if Notre Dame wants to be a part of this TV deal, they need to jump in on this and kind of give the Big Ten an agreement to let them know, yeah, we're joining. Otherwise, you're right, they could take their time on this.
Notre Dame
enough fish though that I think they could get people back to the negotiating table to rework the deal should they decide to join. I'll throw that out.
Well, here's the other thing is that Notre Dame could bring NBC to the table, which could mean more money overall for the Big Ten.
Good point.
Right.
Well, and that's part of it. Notre Dame, aside from being adverse to risk, you look at their history, they've made very low risk moves. I mean, they stayed in the Big East until it sank. They waited.
ACC was a pretty big risk move for them, though.
Well, and they waited until the Big East was sinking.
Right.
I mean, before the Big East, they were in the Mid-Continent Conference. I mean, they were in the same conference as Cleveland State. I mean, I'm dead serious, for a couple of years. Notre Dame is a very risk-adverse school. They do what's safe. They're independent. It's safe. They have the deal with NBC. It's safe. They have the opportunity that NBC may say, hey, you stay what we're doing, we'll give you more. So there's that possibility too. So
they don't have to share the money with anybody.
Exactly. You don't have to share the money with anyone. And that was the whole thing about BYU converting from an independent to a conference member again, is getting away from that system. But I mean, Notre Dame can pretty much dictate their terms. And what the Big Ten can do is create caveats in the deal specific to Notre Dame. And it keeps the window open. But I don't think Notre Dame is going to really push the issue. You know, they're gonna let someone else take the risk, carry the burden. Let a Florida State or a Clemson try to crack through the grant of rights first, pave the path, and then they'll follow. I don't see Notre Dame being the first. They don't need to be the first. With that said, going back to the original question, you know, in regards to Oregon and Washington, they're not flirting with the Big Ten. They're that person who's desperate to get a date with the, you know, that complete
please take us,
please date me for the love of God. They're absolutely desperate, and you know, desperation is not an attractive trait.
That fits great with that. I'm still young. I'm still hip thing about Oregon. Well played, Drew.
Well, thank you. The truth is, if the four go, they're going to follow. That's it. Yeah, you know, they're not going to be so much second fiddle in the Big 12. They just won't be the top dog off the bat. They're going to have to earn that spot. And there's always going to be one eye looking at them, waiting for the time when they leave. However, them joining the Big 12 is good for that conference because you improve the value of the conference. You get the entrance fees, you get the exit fees, and use them for however long they're there. If they stay, you know, long-term, great. If they're only there a handful of years, at least you have that. So as far as the Big 12 goes, getting Oregon and Washington is a low-risk, high-reward move.
Hey, taking paydays and building resources to build yourself up while you have that money. That sounds like a familiar strategy to people we cover on a regular basis, doesn't it, guys?
Mm-hmm. Here, a story that broke. Well, I don't even know if it can qualify as breaking a story, but
I wouldn't.
A story that's been floating out there in terms of discussion. The Pac-12 and the ACC discussing some sort of loose partnership with one another, along with ESPN, in an effort to avoid, for both conferences to avoid being rated, complete with a championship game, possibly in a Champions Bowl in Las Vegas. How far can we throw that, Drew?
It's loose, all right, and it's something that does not smell particularly good.
I tried. Yeah. Oh God. I tried. All I remember is, as I said on Twitter, I tried a similar arrangement with a girl I dated once, and it did not end well.
Yeah, this is a joke. This is an absolute joke. This is ESPN trying to hold on to inventory because the Pac-12 is a part ESPN conference, and they've even gone as far to suggest of finding a way of looping them into the ACC network as a way of holding on to them. I mean, this is a joke. This is just so they can hold on to inventory without having to pay for it.
This strikes me as like desperate. And I said this earlier, and Drew, you were with me on this. I think I was responding to something that I think it was what Tanvir said on Twitter. Tan the man on Twitter. It was like, if your viability as a conference is not already in question, you're not having this discussion to begin with.
You're not a Power 5 conference if you have to do this. This is not Power Conference. This is Conference USA and Mountain West looking to merge to save their own skins. That's what this is. And
actually, that situation seems even more plausible to me. It smacked of San Diego State and Boise State joining the Big East.
Well,
that's what it's
I know I would say if that was football only, if they still had if the BCS continued, they actually, it would have made financial sense, but that's different. This is basically finding out that you can't merge. You can't merge the two. It won't work. The moment you merge, that ACC contract opens for renegotiation.
Correct. So they're trying to circumvent it.
You've lost the blue chip programs. They're gone.
Yeah, they're
So
trying
they're trying to circumvent that, and you're getting this thing that just looks like some Cronenberg-based monster that is going to just kind of slink around and really just look like garbage. And so what you're going to have is you're going to have obviously the Big Ten and the SEC doing their thing. You're going to have the Big 12 that's going to look like a normal conference and doing their thing. And then you're going to have these two little patch jobs doing this Champions Bowl that no one's going to care about because no one already cares about the ACC or the Pac-12 championship game. They don't watch them. Read the ratings. It's true.
Yeah, unless a Florida State or Clemson is involved against somebody marquee, and that very rarely has happened in the ACC. And the Pac-12 got his own.
Miami's been a dumpster fire ever since they moved in. You know, they had one.
That's why I've laughed. I laughed about all this love about Oregon. They don't draw. Like, they don't draw. USC and UCLA are the only ones that draw in the Pac-12 from a rating standpoint.
Well, not only that, but it goes back to brand value. This is all about brand values.
Correct.
Markets are gone. Markets help build brand value, but the market itself doesn't matter. It's the brand. Now, getting LA, you know, the second largest market in the country, you know, okay, that's you don't say no to that, but the truth is,
no, but you're right about this though, Drew, because let's not forget. You know, we talk about brands. USC is a private school. It is
a private school,
but it has a brand.
Right. Well, both schools have a history of championships. They're the number 2 and number 3 all time in NCAA championships for schools, all sports. So, you know, you're bringing not just in football, but in everything else. Obviously, UCLA's value is not in football; it's in other stuff. But they both have a history and tradition of winning, and that has value too, not just the football stuff.
All right, Kyle, go ahead.
All I'll say quickly is Drew can vouch for me. How many years have I been saying that the ACC isn't really a Power 5 conference? That's all I have to say about that part.
Well, part of the problem, Kyle, is, and this is why we're in this mess, is every conference thinks they're a football conference, and they're not. Like, the ACC has never been a football conference. It's a basketball conference. The Big East, the reason it died is because it tried to be somebody it wasn't, and that was a football conference. Give me a break. It's a basketball league. And that's why we're in this mess, because everybody's trying to be a football school or a football conference when only really
a basketball conference with a football problem.
Yeah. I mean, it just is what it is.
I thought I was the one giving the cynical take here. Here, you two guys come.
No, because Kyle, I agree. Like, I'm a pro ACC basketball guy. I mean, what they've done to that league it's been brutal. Like Boston College and Syracuse, give me a break.
Hey, boy, Syracuse, man, they showed up, and well, you can really, other than Virginia Tech, all these schools that came from the Big East showed up and have done nothing.
You can make the argument, by the way, that every school that has changed conferences in the last decade hasn't done a damn thing.
Yeah, I mean, you can.
What's Miami done since joining the ACC?
One division title.
I want to specify in football. I don't want obviously other sports that it could be
one division title. That is it. One division title, no conference championship.
It's a flop. They've been a flop.
They were at the it wasn't Russell Athletic. Oh no, yeah, they were at the Camping World Bowl a couple years back during the pandemic, baby, against Oklahoma State. Whoa.
Miami was better off when they were an independent back in the day, but as you know, college football always causes realignment. This is not something new. Realignment's been going on for decades.
There's only one school that's been successful in the move, and that's Virginia Tech, who has four conference.
I'll give you that.
Four conference championship, 3 more division titles to their name. So I mean, they've done pretty well. And you know, they've obviously been a slew of bowl games and whatever. And
I'll give you that.
But on that, nothing.
By the way, even and I say this as a Syracuse graduate with my Syracuse master's degree hanging on the wall here. Number of ACC division or conference championships in men's basketball that Syracuse has won since joining the ACC, 0.
That was a Big East school. It was a Big East school. That's a basketball school that thinks they could be a football school.
They've been to one Final Four in their third year in the ACC in 2015-16. That's it.
But anyway, yeah.
All right. So here's the fun. Let's get fun. Let's really fire up the speculation.
Let's get funky.
Story dropped from Braden Keith, who's the co-founder of a site called swimswam.com. And actually, I've checked into this. This is a legit swimming site. Okay, they cover college. They cover college swimming. This is a legit. But boy, did he have one that went viral today? Because this is what he. I don't know where he's getting this from, but man, if he turns out to be right, this is the scoop of the millennium. Source, according to Braden_Keith on Twitter, North Carolina, Florida State, Clemson, and Virginia are all negotiating to join the SEC. ESPN is trying to void their TV deal with the ACC. Eric, what do you think?
I hope he enjoys that swimming site, because in about 5 years, that'll be done like swimming will be in college athletics by the time all the realignment's done. But when everybody cuts that sport out of the way. Yeah, I think it's nonsense. I really don't think ESPN can give a bleep about swimming schools moving to conference. I mean, that's ridiculous. I don't even think the SEC would want Virginia, because they would prefer Virginia Tech. I think the Big Ten, Drew, is the one that would target Virginia. And if you're North Carolina, you're going to play the market, because I think both the Big Ten and the SEC want North Carolina.
It's the battleground. North Carolina is the one battleground school, because they can get Georgia Tech. The SEC is going to let them walk because Georgia doesn't want them. But North Carolina, that's the one that they both want. But you're right. Virginia screams Big Ten. Virginia Tech is an SEC school by every stretch of the imagination, except their affiliation. Much like Clemson, they scream SEC school.
I wanted to read a little bit more on this, because they did post a story on their site. According to the source, who remains unnamed, money is a major factor along with recruiting clashes. Florida reportedly doesn't want Miami to join. Tennessee doesn't want UNC, and Kentucky doesn't want Louisville. Louisville brings in the second most revenue among public ACC schools. Miami's revenue isn't public, but it's estimated that they're near the top as well. Plus, they bring a hometown team in a huge market. The source said the conversations are still in the early stages, but as we've seen recently, things can change quickly.
If I may, quickly,
Kyle, yes, please. You were the next one I wanted to hear from.
Yeah, this is a tactic I believe is used in entertainment media, and they're much more desperate to put out stuff on a regular basis because they don't necessarily have as many live events happening like we do, covering sports are a year-round thing. Movies kind of have seasons too. I'm sure you have the summer and then Oscar season, and there's stuff in between, and the in between isn't a whole lot of flesh. The punchline is there could be a guy in an office of a major studio, let's say Paramount, that is friends with Brad Pitt, and somebody invites Brad Pitt to a business luncheon. Someone catches wind of that at the same time. Paramount starts doing press release about releasing the next, I don't know,
Citizen Kane.
Green Hornet. No, they're going to remake Casablanca, and Paramount's executive went to lunch with Ashton Kutcher, right? So then the story gets broke. Paramount, the studio that's making this, had lunch with Ashton Kutcher. They're not related. They're correlated. And that's what you see happening here. I'm sure there have been phone calls between the SEC and other schools, just like we've talked about the Big Ten and all the conferences in this conversation. Nobody's doing anything. It's a tactic. And while I'm not the Leroy Jenkins, I'll quote a different movie from Mad Max Fury Road. I'll point up and go, that's bait.
Now let's bait it even further. Let's talk about why Miami's not on that list. let's go there.
Okay.
Can he say
Miami?
Okay.
Miami
I liked
has
it.
Baggage. Has a lot of baggage. And actually, if you take a step away from that and you actually look at the makeup of the different schools, Miami's profile doesn't fit the SEC. They have an off-campus stadium that's nowhere closer. This teeny little private school that 99.9% of fans had never even stepped foot on their campus. Vanderbilt's only saving grace is the fact they were there already. But I'm obviously
I agree with you, but can I play devil's advocate for a second?
No, you may not. Yes, you may.
I'm going to anyway. They got the brand, don't they?
They are the brand. They have 2 documentaries, and they bring television viewers. And South Carolina isn't an SEC school either, but they took them anyway.
Well, yeah, it's because they were an ACC.
Neither is Arkansas.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, you know why? Because Florida State said you guys waited too long to invite us, and we're going to go to dominate the ACC for a while. And that's what happened.
No, they were afraid of facing real competition. That's an old Bobby Bowden trick. Don't play that game with me.
Don't be. Come on now. Don't be.
You're upsetting Eric.
Look at Mr. Florida State guy over
Bobby
here.
Bowden is an icon in this state. Something that nobody else.
I'm sorry, but Kyle's right on this. It was all about.
I'm sorry that Florida State's the one that actually played people out of state. Not Florida's the one that doesn't play anybody.
It's about affiliation, man. You know, now, granted, Florida State and Memphis tried for decades to get into the SEC, and for decades were shot down. It wasn't until 1990 when they finally got the invite. But by then, the ACC said, "Hey, come to us." And as I was kind of saying before, they went to the path of least resistance. We're going to go dominate over here.
Yeah, but that's what they did. Decision. I don't think Bobby Bowden made that decision. Like, hey guys, let's go to play Virginia. I think that was a overall university and athletic department decision. And by the way, I heard that Florida helped block that. Like that was one of those where FSU didn't want to get rejected again, so they took the ACC. It's a lot of drama there.
They would have been invited. They would have gotten it. They would have had it.
All right.
You don't tell a school to apply if you don't have the votes.
That doesn't affect us at all. Well, I'm sure we'll get our invite.
Are our respective spouses arguing here, Jeff? What the hell's going on?
Now, there's another thing I want to point out, and it's the whole thing with Virginia. Now, let's go back. Let's turn the clock back to the 2003 realignment.
Yeah, and let's also bear in mind that Virginia is an AAU member, which if you want to, we've heard them flirting with the Big Ten too. But anyway, carry on.
Right. When the ACC was looking to expand, the state government of Virginia strong-armed
Commonwealth.
You're right. Commonwealth of Virginia. My mistake. Sorry, guys. Sorry, who's?
Someone's got to be an editor around here anyway.
Yeah, well, it is a Commonwealth. Same with Massachusetts, but I digress. The government forced Virginia. They got strong-armed into supporting Virginia Tech getting one of the invites. So the question is, how tight is that bond that was created there when the next round of realignment comes? Will the state allow them to be split?
Sounds a little shotgun marriagey to me.
Well, it's like Texas politics, man. When it comes to the schools, that's how the Big 12 got put together, and why Texas struggled to get to one of the reasons why the Pac-16 failed is we have a Texas Tech problem.
Jerry Springer called. He's going to invite them on the show next week.
Well, the only last thing on that is the 2 biggest states that the SEC and the Big Ten do not have a flag in is North Carolina and Virginia. So I think, to me, those are going to be big-time targets for those states. And that's why, from a UCF perspective, because this is a UCF podcast, as a reminder, that is why UCF will not be in the Big Ten or in the SEC or probably the ACC anytime soon.
Well, yeah, the only reason the ACC would open up if something goes horribly wrong, which means don't go there. And they don't have the academics for the Big Ten, and they don't fit the SEC, blueprint, because Florida owns the state already. They already got it. Florida State has done enough to warrant being brought in. And I think Florida's going to begrudgingly do it, kind of like A&M did with Texas. But the truth is UCF just doesn't move the needle enough.
Last little bit of outside of UCF speculation before we get to how this affects UCF bit. We'll take a break and we'll come back to that. But Derek Johnson, radio host for KLWN.
Former linebacker? He's got a radio show now?
KLWN. That sounds like clown.
in Kansas, they do Kansas stuff. So he quote tweeted the whole Braden Keith, North Carolina, Florida State, Clemson, Virginia thing to the SEC, and said, if this winds up happening, the SEC is the biggest winner, but the Big 12 might be second. Imagine scooping up Pitt, West Virginia travel partner and rival, Miami, UCF travel partner, and Louisville. Well, what do we think about that, gentlemen? And Drew, I'll give you the first word on this one.
Okay, well, I'm a proponent of finding a way to improve the East Block.
Let's say all these dominoes fall exactly like this.
Yeah, let's say someone is dumb enough to open up the grant of rights of the
Yeah,
ACC
ESPN
and
wants to purposely pay more money when they don't have to for another decade.
It's
Sure.
so stupid.
Yeah.
Well, let's say that someone is dumb enough to open up the ACC's grant of rights, and all hell breaks loose. I'm a big fan of Louisville. Now, granted, they took some shots after the Patino scandal and Papa John and all this other stuff. That's close.
Good save there, Drew. That was really good.
Yeah, well, thanks. They wet the bed.
It's a family podcast. Anyway,
They wet the bed. So their values diminish, but it's still a really good program up and across the board. And they fill the Eastern Bloc. Even Memphis is still an attractive opportunity because of the work that they've done and work that they're working on with improving their own program. They're the 1G5 on the Eastern side I would want to bring in. But if you can bring in Miami, obviously it makes Florida, Florida not an island complete by itself, because you have UCF here, you have Miami there, you have a travel partner.
Hey, UCF finally will have a real football rivalry in the end of the year on Black Friday now. It's moving forward if that happens.
I don't know what they're going to name the game, but I mean, you want bad names. There's people going around saying, "Oh, let's do a color battle with Colorado, and we're all gold uniforms." That's going to look like someone once again wet the bed.
Let's not do that.
that was too easy.
Here's that meatball.
There's that Pitt, West Virginia thing that always kind of.
The backyard brawl is beautiful. I would take that over the Holy War.
That's a fun rivalry.
I do think Louisville would be the first draft pick there in that scenario.
I think so too. I think they got the best.
Remember, they flirted
department
with
up and down.
Louisville a decade ago. They flirted with them, and Louisville decided to go to the ACC, and then they settled on West Virginia. Louisville was the first choice for the Big 12.
Well, you know what happened? It was McConnell from West Virginia, Mitch McConnell stepped in, and that's where things kind of went a little bit sideways. So it got political.
Well, Mitch McConnell's from Kentucky.
Shocker.
It was from West Virginia.
No,
he's Kentucky. Trust me, he's Kentucky.
I got my wires, but he did get involved.
Of course he does.
Because it got political. It was ugly.
All right. Well, we had some fun hopping on the Speculatron here for a little bit, but you came here for UCF perspective, right? So when we return, we're going to make you sit through a break for that. When we return, we'll talk about what all this means for UCF going forward. What is the best case scenario for UCF? What could be the worst case scenario for UCF as the realignment as the realignment carousel starts to turn once again? Stick around. We'll be right back. It's the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
All right, we're back here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We got Jeff, we got Eric, we got Drew, and we've got Kyle. So we just spent a significant amount of time speculating our relative behinds off about conference realignment. But you came here to get an answer to the question: what does any of this mean for UCF? What's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario for this school in particular? With all the speculation flying around about four corners and the Big 12 and Pac-12 ACC alliances and all that nonsense. So I want to start with you, Eric Lopez. I want to do, what is the best case scenario for UCF? What is the worst case scenario?
Best case scenario that the Big 12 has a good TV deal and stays strong and is the number 3 conference, at least fighting with either the ACC or the Pac-12 or whoever's left of those two among the top conferences in the sport. Worst case scenario is that you get raided by the Pac-12 or other conferences, and you're probably calling the Sun Belt to see if there's a home.
So what's the the skeleton key here? Like, what's the thing that you're looking at where, okay,
I wanna
if this
see what the-
happens,
what does
we're
the
okay.
Pac-12
If
do?
this
What-
happens,
right.
oh crap.
What does the Pac-12 do? Do they try to stick it out at 10 members and try to add Mountain West and try to survive? Or do they say goodbye? That's what's going to decide this. And I'm not going to predict what happened because we were all giving the funeral services to the Big 12 a year ago and we saw how that turned out. Now, the difference is the Big 12 actually had a good TV deal and the schools were so ticked at OU and Texas that they were defiant to even and they had nobody took them. Nobody took them. So they were defiant to stick together and nobody would take them. Whereas I think the Pac-12 people are like, we're sick of this. We're broke. I don't think there's that big defiance to stick around, but you never say never.
Kyle?
Well, this is what they mean, Eric, by it's just different down here too, right? Out west, they're aloof about football in comparison. Like,
absolutely. Absolutely.
So
That's a good point.
When you got that much Texas in your blood, it means more. For me, the best case scenario for UCF is the ACC getting involved, diluting the talent of one of the two super conferences being formed from the Big Ten and or the SEC. Here's a hint. I don't think the SEC is the one that'll get diluted. To where the new entity that is formed by Pac-12 / Big 12 or whatever that looks like gets in a position to somehow supplant them. Okay, now granted, I'm going long play here. I'm not saying this happens in the next few years. I'm talking about down the line as things start to crumble, as big media markets, the only way that Drew pointed out that markets matter anymore, right, are actually now starting to get combined into one place. Please remember the point we have all made about the Big 12 and its recent expansion, most part featuring bigger markets, Houston and Orlando in particular. And by the way, the Big 10's huge move involving LA and that general area, huge move market-wise. Texas and Oklahoma likewise as well. Oklahoma not necessarily huge, but Texas, you get it. With that being the new central figure, and as more of these older powers that aren't based in big markets start to dilute the product, the entity that is the Pac-12 and the Big 12, whatever's left of them, slides into that second best conference in college sport piece and continues to grow in the tradition of quick growth that we've come to see from UCF as a program. And the best case scenario going as far down the line, gentlemen, to when UCF hits that centennial mark that they are a marquee school down the line, this day would be remembered by historians as one of the significant lifts up. Worst case scenario, which I must reiterate is still better than anything UCF would have experienced, is if you get that instability in the Big 12. And like Eric mentioned, it's tied to the TV deal. And, let's say that some sort of deal is made, but some sort of poison pill or something happens to take some of the major players out, or somehow there's some sort of unrest within the conference. I mean, it's not like the school's already experienced being blocked by another school before that is now completely irrelevant and may go away as being forever damned to the G5. But that's kind of where it is for me. And I don't know what the trapdoor is for the bad, but I kind of explained what I think the key.
Well, it's like if an Oklahoma State, a TCU go to the Pac-12 or something like that, which could be, if that's something that could play out.
I'm glad you said that. Here's the trapdoor. If the Pac-12 and Big 12 somehow become adversarial, that is awful for UCF.
Not great.
Drew, you're the one out of all of us who's been the most plugged in on this entire story from the very beginning. You have the last word. If you're a UCF, what's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario?
I'm going to start with the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is the Pac-12 somehow convinces half a dozen teams from the Big 12 to jump over. Until there's stability, until this is all flushed out, that's still a possibility. Guess what? UCF's on an island. They're going to be the loser here. They're not going to be brought in a merger on that level if it's all Western schools. So then you have, okay, what's going to happen then? You go back to the American? I don't think UCF's going to go back to the American. I don't think that would happen. So basically, you've got the Sun Belt Conference waiting for you. So there's
we
your
got
worst
that
case
men's
scenario.
soccer deal in there, huh?
They already have one leg in with the soccer, no pun intended. So the worst
that
case
was
scenario.
intended. Don't lie, that was intended.
Worst case scenario is they end up being left out because until July 1st, 2023, things can change. Now, is it very likely? No, it's not very likely, but something can happen. And yeah, there'll be dollars involved and all sorts of things. UCF will probably make a nice payday on it as a result of violating contracts that have already been signed and notarized and sealed, but it can happen.
Backroom deal that would take. Woo.
Oh, it would be messy. It would be a very messy situation. But ultimately, UCF would find themselves in the Sun Belt Conference. That's your worst
the
case.
billable hours alone would be.
And UCF would make a killing on it because they can go after future earnings loss and all sorts of other stuff. I mean, they'll make a nice payday out of it. Definitely 8 figures worth.
Which is why, Drew and Kyle, you could jump in. I don't think UCF, whatever happens, even if the worst case scenario happens, I don't think there's any regrets of leaving the American for the Big 12, correct? Because you have to take this chance. Because if you're in the American right now, you got no chance. You got no chance.
You had to take it, even because
this goes back to the thing that sorry, Drew. This goes back to the thing that Eric, I've always argued with you about is you can only make a decision based on the information that you have at the moment you make the decision.
Correct.
You didn't know this was coming,
right? You had no idea.
Yeah.
So
you couldn't have planned for it. So you got to go with the best knowledge and information that you have. You make this move 10 out of 10 times, and you just see where it flows. Now, that's not likely. It really isn't.
Real quick before you go on, Drew, I feel like that in your opinion, do you feel like that would even need the complacency of a broadcast partner as well, like a Fox or an ESPN to have happen?
Oh, absolutely. The Pac-12 is going to have enough of a financial backing to convince Big 12 teams to jump over.
Yeah.
The Big 12
and they would have to convince it that it would be more than whatever the Big 12 is worth on the market.
And I would have to say it'd have to be a lot more.
Yeah,
I would have to say it'd be a considerable amount because
I'm seeing reports people are saying that the Big 12, if they add the 4 corner schools, could be worth $40 million a year per school, maybe more.
On the surface, I don't buy that at all. However, you have a possibility of a bidding war going on, especially if the Pac-12 dissolves. On sheer value, no, they're not worth $40 million a year. No way. With the 4 corners, maybe 30, maybe. But now you have an inventory issue. Pac-12's gone. I mean, CBS and NBC have holes in their schedules already, and they're looking for a new dance partner.
And Fox.
Well, Fox, I consider Fox in the Big 12 to be a lock. I don't think that's going to change.
That feels like a lot, doesn't it, Drew? I've gotten the same vibe that this is going to be, I think football is going to be on Fox as the number 2 to the Big 10.
Yeah, I agree. And, CBS
Get
and
ready,
NBC
big noon kickoff,
fight.
Urban Meyer at the Bounce House. Huh? No.
Now, here's the interesting thing. The question is, now the Big 12 has always done their contracts where the Tier 3 programming has not been sold.
Right.
It may change this time. They may actually package it somewhere. Tier 3 for UCF right now is ESPN Plus. If they leave it with the schools, the question is, will UCF make a deal with ESPN to keep it on ESPN Plus? I actually hope that happens because it's been a very good exposure.
Right.
And the Big 12 was
you're not alone.
The Big 12 was one of the first conferences at all to get involved with ESPN Plus. So there's already a history there. Bob Bowlesby's going away, so now you have a chance to heal relationships. So things can happen there. Let's go to the best case scenario. Best case scenario is UCF joins the Big 12, which I think is a 95% chance of happening. That's the best case.
Stop making us nervous, man. We have enough PTSD from all this.
Dude, it's
94.9%.
Hey,
I can go further, Jeff.
99. They're married. All right, they're married. They're living together. They're waiting for the wedding ceremony next year. The
all right. Because of that, 94.89.
Go ahead. Move on.
No, he dropped it.
I don't want to get into all that. Let's not get into all that. Go ahead.
I think short of a miracle, they'll end up in the Big 12. I don't see the Pac-12 being able to pull them away. That conference just doesn't carry value. Stanford, yeah, Stanford has results, but they don't move the needle on the market.
It's an academic school.
They're an academic school. Their value is paired with Notre Dame, because Notre Dame is obsessed with Stanford. So
and Stanford fits the Big Ten.
Well, they do for academically. They sure don't athletically.
But that's what I mean. But
they're like,
they do athletically in every sport, but the ones that everyone cares about.
Yeah, I mean, they're the ones who win the.
Well, I mean, if they wouldn't have fired Johnny Dawkins, they'd still be pretty good in basketball. They were pretty good when he was there.
Yeah, but there's a lot of fans who want to fire him again, so maybe he can go back to Stanford.
Well, I mean, to be fair though, which school has produced the most Olympians of any school in the United States?
Stanford, and it's not close.
Yeah. It's not close.
So Drew,
but I know you say nobody cares there.
Yeah, nobody cares.
Well, no, the truth is,
some people do care about that.
Not in
football
this business
moves
anymore.
the needle. So I mean, Stanford's only chance is
I don't.
Big Ten.
Right, agreed. But that Big Ten, you're right.
But they don't carry television value on their own.
Right.
Oregon is going to be the breadwinner of that conference, and even they only move the needle so far. So you basically have Mountain West 2.0 potentially, a little bit better. You're probably going to have to get some couple California schools in there to kind of fill in if you can't get these Big 12s.
This is Boise's moment. They've been waiting for it for so long.
And you know what? Watch Cal and Stanford say, no, your academics aren't good enough. Watch them do it because they're that snobby.
Pac-12 is very arrogant.
I hadn't
Drew.
thought of that.
They're the most arrogant conference in the country.
He's
by
absolutely
far.
right.
They make the SEC
even more than the Big Ten.
Yes,
way more.
Drew's right. Drew's way right.
When it comes to academics, really,
they call themselves the Conference of Champions because they really
don't
take
want
pride in water
BYU because they have issues with BYU's code of conduct and everything. They're Cal and Stanford.
We're the Conference of Sailing.
You're looking at Northern California, a very specific way of thinking. The schools think like that too. Yep. And so these private entities like BYU are not welcome. In fact, one of the rumors going around was about this merger, and they would drop BYU and UCF for geography purposes. I get that. That makes a lot of sense. Because you're not making $100 million a year. Okay. But BYU was strictly because of,
because it's a religious school.
It's a religious school. They've had some questionable things with their code of conduct. We're not going to get into it because that's not what the show's about, but that plays a role.
All you got to do is
we'll take them, baby. That's why we'll take them in the Big 12. That's why we're taking them.
They'll fit just fine in the Big 12.
That's right.
You just don't play them on Sunday. That's the only thing. You don't play them on Sunday.
So what's the best case? You get
best
the 4
case,
Pac-12?
They join the Big 12. You got the 6 that come over, including Oregon and Washington. You get into a bidding war between CBS and NBC, and you get your $40 million. That's the best. Yeah, then you sign a grant of rights with it, so you're locked in.
You're locked in. Yeah, I agree.
That's your best case scenario.
Until for hopefully another 8 to 10 years, then you'll get plucked in 10 years. But that's 10 years.
Orlando to Seattle is going to be a hell of a road trip.
It's a lot better than
Lubbock.
But
here's the thing. Orlando goes everywhere.
Correct.
And
we need good cities in this conference. The one thing I will say about leaving the one thing we definitely have a drop off is quality cities. I mean, we're leaving New Orleans, we're leaving Memphis, we're leaving Philadelphia to join Lubbock, Stillwater, Manhattan, Kansas.
Welcome to college towns. You're leaving. Remember, outside of a handful
I'll take Lubbock over Philadelphia any day. But
outside of a handful,
nobody would take Lubbock. If I know people that live Lubbock, they wouldn't even take Lubbock.
I'll take Toccoa, Georgia over Philadelphia.
You take away Ohio State and Michigan State and a few others. Outside of a handful of schools, all these big power conference schools are in these small little towns. They're in the Gainesville.
Oh, for sure. No, of course. That's college sports in general.
That's college sports.
Land grant institutions.
Which is
exactly. So you're moving away.
Big old flooded boulder in here, though, gentlemen. As NIL becomes more of a thing and local sponsors have more impact and corporations start to get involved, unless, of course, the NCAA actually comes in and allegedly tries to enforce some stuff. Gentlemen, the days of the small town dominating is threatened.
I disagree with that.
The whole reason.
It's all about national at this point.
Saban started talking trash. Well, this guy's getting $1 million and this program's doing this. Dude is legit worried about the money in his era. Now, granted, he'll probably be retired before the full-fledged downside actually hits, but this is the size of the support in the area as far as market is important from the standpoint of paying players. And I know the theory is that eventually these guys will get burned and they'll spend less, but hey, we're the idiots that keep going to the sports and supporting them.
And we'll still continue to do that.
It's funny you should mention that, Kyle. There was a thing today about Mark Stoops at Kentucky talking about this very thing, about needing financial help to keep up with the Joneses. He's not wrong, though. He's not
wrong.
Know
why he says that? Because his school is the one that spends the money on the basketball side.
Yeah, they don't spend on football.
Yeah,
so
I mean, he's
asking
wrong.
for help.
I mean, nobody's going to feel sorry for Mark Stoops, all right?
Here's the thing.
Yeah. Mark Stoops is really saying, I need a football donor really bad.
Exactly.
It really, the big X factor on all this is what happens with NIL collectives, which is still a questionable issue. NIL collectives are a bit controversial. They allow boosters to pay direct, and that allows nationwide interaction from an NIL standpoint.
Well, that's a whole right, but that's a whole different topic that we.
But that makes a difference. That flows exactly into Kyle's argument, though. You take that away, you're now more locked into local stuff. Not fully, but you're more locked into local stuff because you won't have the boosters directly able to interact like they are right now, which is why it's such a gray area for me. You know,
but it ain't going away. I'm sorry to tell you, it's not going away.
What I think is gonna ultimately happen? The Knight Commission flat out said, "Hey, the NCAA should not be running FBS football." I think this consolidation with the Super Conference bill is going to lead to FBS no longer being under the NCAA. The other sports will be.
Correct.
But FBS won't be. They're going to eventually go with the Knight Commission. And when that happens, I think you're going to see a big change in how the NIL works. Because now the commissioners, who are probably going to lead to one commissioner of college football, is going to start throwing it's basically about the NFL light. And you're going to start seeing them throw their weight around a little bit.
The NFL light, that's a good word. The NFL light, that's a good word. That's a good word. I will say this, though. If you add those 4 Pac-12 schools, Colorado, what we talked about earlier, then they've been a flop since leaving the Big 12 for the Pac-12.
And they'll still be a flop coming back to the Big 12.
We'll see. But
they
there's
that
potential.
Window.
Yeah,
they missed that window.
Utah, don't let anybody know, but they've been actually the best football program in the Pac-12 for the last handful of years under Kyle Willingham. They have. They
went to the Rose Bowl last year. They took it.
Beat the crap out of Oregon.
Since Chip left Oregon, you can make that case.
You can make the case, but Oregon too is beating an overrated program. Beating another overrated program doesn't.
But I would take you. My point is, Utah.
They proved it against Ohio State in that Rose Bowl. They looked fantastic. They just came a little bit short, but they both played their.
Put it to this way: I would take Utah to be the favorites in the new Big 12.
That could be
short term.
Absolutely, at short term, yes.
Short term.
I would take them over Oklahoma State, and then you get the 2 Arizona schools who good markets and deal. So football-wise, I think it'd be actually pretty good. But the other thing is,
Arizona's a mess, man. Arizona's such a dumpster fire.
Oh, it is. But
football terrible and all the.
Both Arizona schools are a mess. Both Arizona schools are a mess.
They're there for basketball, gentlemen.
Bingo. Good point, Kyle. Kyle, you and I are going to have some good damn basketball to watch. That would be the premier basketball league ever.
Well, here's the thing.
It would
the
be
Big 12 is the premier today. So imagine tomorrow.
At Arizona, it would blow away the old Big East. It would blow away the ACC, and that's where ESPN, in my opinion, will get involved. I think they would be willing to give up football to Fox as long as they can keep the Big 12 basketball content like they do now, because one of their bigger TV draws is Big Monday with the Big 12, and Kansas is a player there. They can make a ton of money with basketball in the Big 12.
They're going to have to overpay to keep that
exactly
basketball.
And that's where they might get the 30 to 40 million. It's not because of the football, but it's because of the whole package combined, because I think ESPN is going to fight for the basketball, because that is important inventory to ESPN is college basketball every night. That is dominant. They bailed on baseball. And I'm going to tell you, Kyle, the only bigger fight's going to be Brian Murphy's going to fight Kyle and me for seats to go to Kansas and Arizona for UCF basketball. That's going to be He's gonna put a jet on his wheelchair, and he's gonna fly to cover the game, and not lose the wheelchair like he did in Tulsa when UCF.
I was gonna say he at least is not stopping in Tulsa where he loses his wheelchair.
Exactly, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got Kansas, you got Baylor, you got Arizona, even
Woo!
Utah is always been a good basketball program. That adds up.
Season
Oklahoma
tickets.
State.
Oh my God! I'll buy season tickets for UCF basketball, and God help us, we're gonna.
Oh,
Oh God!
it's
It's gonna hurt, guy. We're gonna. Oh, there's gonna be a lot of losses.
It's
But
gonna be a lot
fun,
of losses.
Though. It'll be fun.
It's gonna be there's gonna be growing pains. But hey,
Ooh.
if you're doing this for $30-40 million a year,
Nobody will care.
take the hit.
Yeah.
You'll catch up. It'll take time, but you'll catch up.
Calvin Sampson, who by the way they're joining the league, made a great point.
Houston's no slouch.
He says that Houston just got they've gotten like 150 million benefit or something to that basketball. He feels they're like 400 million behind just by joining now.
I heard that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great quote from Calvin Sampson. So yeah, we're gonna be playing a lot of catch up in basketball. But damn, what a freaking good basketball!
And that's where the value of having that grant of rights put into that new contract, which I guarantee that's going to be there because of all of the instability going around them.
I mean, Jeff gets to do PA of Kansas and Arizona coming to the.
You do not make fun of Lance Leopold like that.
I meant the arena.
Can't
I didn't
wait.
talk football there.
Can't wait. I'll tell you, it's all right. Last bit on this, I'll ask the three of you, and I'll start with Kyle. What's the next domino that you are keeping close eye on right now?
I mean, I mentioned that Notre Dame is the biggest deal. But for me, I'm watching in particular Oregon closely. And listen, Elo, I get that you think Oregon in the mix of this is completely overrated. Matt Murschel of the Orlando Sentinel actually happens to agree with you.
Where did he say that, Kyle?
Well, that would have been on the Student of the Game podcast that you could check out on the Huddle Up Podcast YouTube channel and on any other podcast outlet. Yes, that's accurate. But yeah, Matt completely agrees with you on that. I think something that both of you are slightly overlooking is kind of a, what is the word? A bit of an intangible, for lack of a way to put it. First of all, West Coast numbers for college football suck in general because it's West Coast football.
Unless USC's at the peak.
Well, USC's at the peak. And oh, by the way, when USC's at the peak, they win the games that are biggest aren't the ones that they're necessarily hosting, unless they're hosting a big power.
Well, and the other problem USC will have now is when they dominated under Pete Carroll, there was like no football in LA. Now they have the Rams, they have the Chargers, the Dodgers are doing great, the Lakers are still the Lakers. Yeah, so that's the market's changed in LA.
And
you might actually find someone who admits to being a Clippers fan.
Well, you can now. That's the thing. Good point. And even with the Lakers,
that's not funny.
Well done. And, by the way, the Lakers, even though they're declining, still have LeBron James.
Well, and they're the Lakers. Yeah, the Lakers is always going to be number one in that town.
Listen, LeBron still draws more than a Family Guy reference, albeit great as it was.
But no, and let me just clarify what I'm saying about Oregon. Oregon would be my issue with Oregon is there's this belief that they believe they should be in the Big Ten. The Big Ten doesn't need Oregon.
That's Pacific elitism, and you know it.
Oh yeah, I'm not.
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying
about need. And let's go back to the conversation a little bit last week that we had without Drew.
Big Ten doesn't need USC or UCLA, but there they are.
No, that's different because USC and UCLA actually will bring extra dollars to.
They
the
move
TV
the needle.
Exactly. Oregon doesn't for the TV dollars. They don't. Otherwise, they would be in this package.
Yes and no to the TV thing. I'll put it this way. They're the next gym on the list. I'm not here to tell you that they're as expensive as USC or UCLA because of market all of that. And I know I'm going a little bit against my own argument, citing Oregon as the biggest target. They're not necessarily the biggest market and all that other stuff, but they add a lot of something that a lot of these blue bloods don't have. Something, for example, of another very young school takes advantage of in order to rise prominence in a short time. Yes, I'm alluding to the hip factor, what they do on social media, the uniforms. Gentlemen, I'm not going to name names, but I had to push back an interview of mine because we had to talk about uniforms. Oregon and the deal with Nike is a big deal. Eric, I know you scoff at it. I want to scoff at it, but unfortunately, it's been slapped in my face enough that this matters enough to a conference and its branding, because the one thing that either the SEC or the Big Ten is missing is being hip. Heck, the Big 12 is definitely definitely the rising star conference of programs. They're the island of misfit toys that is up and coming and has demanded that you pay attention to them. And that vibe, if the Big Ten can capture that, from Oregon is a great thing. And oh, by the way, then they have officially locked up the West as far as the most significant programs.
Eric, what's the domino you're keeping the closest eye on?
Big Ten TV deal. Because when that deal gets announced, that closes the door on Notre Dame joining, at least for the foreseeable future.
When do you think that might happen?
John Oran, who knows way more about this stuff than I do, but he does a great podcast, says July, August. We should finally know about the Big Ten TV deal.
Well, it's July. So
we'll
find out.
Yeah, late July, August, he's hoping. Obviously, this was supposed to be done in May, but, they've added since.
Drew?
For me, it's Florida State and Clemson. If they can find a
Really?
crack,
Whoa.
well, it's all about finding a crack in the grant of rights.
Leroy Jenkins!
Leroy Jenkins!
Now all you have in
drops
common
in
with
with-
Leroy Jenkins is dying in that raid in a pathetic effort. That's
And you know
awful.
what? He charges in because the probability of them
a
breaking
lot
that
on
grant of
that.
rights is slim to none. But you know what? If they manage to do it,
Oh,
all the dominoes move. You
Oh,
have
yeah,
the
then it's
Notre
chaos.
Dame move.
Oh, yeah,
You have
yeah,
the North Carolina move. You have the Clemson. You have the Miami. They all move in if they can find a way to crack that. That changes everything. It's not even one school thing. It's not the Big Ten contract. It's not Oregon. It's everything. The floodgates open. Now, Oregon, who's in the Pac-12, and what's left of it at this point, oh crap, we have an invitation that's about to expire from the Big 12. They can look east now. Maybe we should take it. So, I mean, it impacts everybody once they find a way to break it. But the
How
chances
long
of
is that going
breaking
to
it,
be? Yeah.
the chances, well, once it happens, everything just,
Right.
Hey, if I grow wings, I could fly to your house and we could golf a lot easier, partner.
Yeah, but we're bad at golf.
So that way I could get better to play more because I have wings to fly to go play now.
Drink some Red Bull, man. It'll help. But that's my domino is Florida State and Clemson, because they're the two that are going to try the hardest to get out, because they're the two most valuable brands at that point. North Carolina is a number 3 in the fact that both conferences.
Well,
want
there's
them.
a debate there whether who would you pick first if you're the Big Ten or the SEC, or if you're the SEC, and that do you try to get Carolina to block them from going to the Big Ten?
Well, at that point, it doesn't matter, because I don't think Carolina's going to try to break that grant of rights. They'll take advantage of it, but they're not going to try.
I wouldn't dismiss North Carolina if they were available.
If they're available, but I don't think
don't-
they're going to be the first team available.
But I wouldn't dismiss them to the Big Ten because who is
No, that's the battleground.
You know who, right? And you know who is a famous alum of Carolina that played point guard at North Carolina in basketball? That's pretty influential in the Big Ten.
Wasn't it Jim Delaney?
Ding, ding, ding! You know your college hoops history. That is
Former Big Ten commissioner and probably the most powerful man in any room in college football history is Jim Delaney.
Yep.
All right.
But that's where I'm at. That's my Leroy Jenkins out of left field kind of move. Is I'm looking at Florida State and Clemson, and what happens with them will dictate everything else.
Whatever you say, Skip.
Wow. That's going to be.
You wanted it,
man.
you got it.
I do feel like, this, the USC UCLA thing was kind of like the lights coming on in the room and seeing all of the dominoes set up. What's the next, you walk in the room, you flip on the lights, there we go. What's the next, who's going to tip over that next domino? And when, I mean, that's,
I just don't think the other ones move the needle enough. I mean, open the floodgates. Let's, go big or go home, right?
Yeah. So we'll see.
never-
We'll see. But I
never
do
know.
think the Big Ten TV deal is important because if they announce that deal, Notre Dame didn't commit. Now you wonder, is Oregon, Washington next, or is it whatever? And I think that's when you might see these Pac-12 schools make a decision of what they want to do in their future.
Yeah. And now here's a thought, Eric, that if Notre Dame, the consideration of Notre Dame still going, that opens the idea of Stanford getting into the Big Ten before Oregon.
Agreed. I agree with you. I think Stanford will go in before Oregon and Washington do. In fact, I could see a Stanford Cal, and now all of a sudden you have four West Coast schools if they want to go that direction. I agree. I think Stanford's ahead of Oregon and Washington. That's going to hurt.
The only way they can get Cal is if they get North Carolina. You got to have the balance.
And I think that's what they're going to shoot for. I think they're going to shoot for
But
Carolina.
Notre Dame has a thing for Stanford.
Yeah.
And that may be a bargaining chip to bring him in.
Absolutely.
So,
100% agree.
for Stanford is because Notre Dame is prominent. I can buy that, but I mean, I don't know how we could have the conversation about brand, and then in the very next move, you say Stanford's ahead of Oregon. I'm still.
It's only because Notre Dame would want that, and that would be a condition.
That's an answer. And let me say this too, in your defense, Drew.
Wow.
The crux of your hot take is the ACC deal breaking down. I will say this. If that happens, it certainly would be the biggest catalyst. The question posed was, what are you watching? I think Oregon and Washington is going to happen first, specifically Oregon, in my opinion. Granted, to Jeff's point at the beginning of this is all speculation. Right now, there is no common sense. So
it's the silly season. This is the off season, man. This gets us till
kickoff, right? This is going to get us. Hey, we got media day, Big 12 media days next week.
Yeah, well, it has gotten us to the end of the show. So
there you go.
We promised you a lot of realignment, and this is the off season, and there we go. Now, a couple of reminders before we go. Don't forget to vote as we wind down the awards for our Black and Gold Banneret Awards. We had some great response, by the way, from all the fans, from the athletes, from the coaches. Really thankful.
I'm going to give a shout out. Volleyball and softball. You both have.
They have brought it.
Well, they have brought a friendly competition warfare to both of them. They have. I've talked to both sides, both that players involved. There is a war going on between those two teams. They're friendly, but yet super competitive, which has been mind-boggling.
Friendly competition.
You gotta love it.
Indeed.
So make sure you follow us.
How far can they vote? How long can they vote to?
The ones that are coming out are going to be done. The ones that are coming out this week, the voting closes on Sunday, the 10th. We may have a few left over, some of the big awards left over, like Team of the Year, Athlete of the Year, that we'll probably go for another 3 or 4 days after that if they come out next week. But we're going to try and get done all of the other ones except those this week. So you have until Sunday to vote for those, and then the last few we'll have into next week. So make sure you follow us at UCF_SBN. Again, that's UCF_SBN on Twitter for the latest on that, as well as Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret. If you subscribe to this podcast, thank you so much. Make sure you leave us a review. If you don't, you can find us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts on the Android platform. You can also don't forget to follow each of us. I am at Jeff_Sharon. Eric Lopez is at Eric Lopez Elo. Drew is at Statboy Drew, and Kyle is at the SOTG for the student of the game. Also, don't forget to follow Bryson Turner at It's Bryson Turner for all the latest news coming from the offseason from UCF's various Olympic sports. And Bryson has been the real MVP in getting these awards up, so I wanted to give him a shout out on that one. So, all right, so that'll do it for us here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast for this week. We hope you had a great 4th of July. Enjoy the upcoming week. Golly, let's see how things turn out the rest of the way here with Conference Realignment.
Can't get any worse.
It can't get any worse. Oh God, don't make me nervous like this, Drew. All right, for all of us, for Drew, for Kyle, for Eric, I'm Jeff. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week.